Hello, and welcome to Illuminate. I am so excited about this session. This is the core of what we do at Sumo Logic internally, and I'm so lucky to serve and support the team that does this. Again, as a reminder, my name is George Gerchow, which I'll do a more thorough intro here in a second. Our team is called RISK, which stands for Real Estate, IT, Security, and Compliance. But today, we're going to talk about our platform and the amount of pride that I have in the work that we've done that takes us way beyond the competition and helps our customers on not only securing it, but making sure it's compliant. And we're also going to talk about how securing that data really helps out our customers and all of our prospects as well too, as they're starting to go through a lot of these challenges of moving towards cloud computing and just getting out there and making sure that they're protected against eventual threats and supply chain attacks. So let's get into it a little bit. But first, a little bit about me. I've been in this industry a long time. That's really all that needs to be said. Before I came to Sumo Logic, I did security a couple of times at VMware. I was a boomerang there, but I'm part of a lot of security organizations out there like IANS, Institute of Applied Network Security, do some things for SANS, do some things for ISC squared. So a lot of the who's that I'm lucky enough again to serve and support and work with those folks. So been in it for a while, but I've been at Sumo for 7.5 years. It's the longest I've ever been anywhere. And the reason why I'm still here is because I'm still so passionate about what we do and the value that we bring to our customer base. So security is in our DNA. A lot of folks don't know, but our founders came from ArcSight many, many years ago. And a lot of you know, ArcSight was a security company, a SIM that was one day purchased by HP. But now, we took that same rigor that came from ArcSight and then brought it to Sumo Logic. And so being security focused from a founder level is huge. It's one of the reasons why I joined the company. So we know that across the board, whether it's our team or our system security folks that live out in Poland, big shout out to them. We just have a lot of security experience on our team. We have a threat hunting team as well too. So just a whole lot of security folks at Sumo that really take a lot of pride in building that out through our company because as you know, it's everyone's responsibility. Best in class SecOps. So this is true. We've lived by this standard of not being blockers or inhibitors to innovation or agility, but yet providing guardrails to where developers can feel like they can use all the innovative platforms they need to, but just with certain guidelines to make sure that we remain secure, as a platform, as that part of that service that we deliver to our customers. And then finally, the last one, security by design. I mean, our employee number one, Stefan, is a great security guy by his own right. He's our chief architect. We've all learned a ton from him. But being a multi-tenant platform is not easy to build. That architecture is insane. And it's amazing how differentiating it is more than ever today when it was architected 12 years ago. And a lot of it was because of the way that we were able to make sure that none of those tenants were able to see or share each other's data, the way that we do encryption, which we'll get into here in a minute, but just so many advantages of that multi-tenant architecture. In my mind, if you're not multi-tenant in the cloud, you're not cloud native. And that really is a differentiator for us as far as the way we scale and process data compared to our competition. So let's talk a little bit about that security and compliance. And when you look at this list, I mean, this is pretty crazy. We're going through 2 audits at any given time. Right now, we're going through our SAR, so our security assessment review yearly for FedRAMP, which is a delight in itself. But we're really proud of this list. We are the only cloud SIM solution, data analytics solution in the cloud native, that is PCI certified. Well, what is PCI? For those of you that don't know, it's a payment credit card industry. And so anything that touches a credit card transaction now needs to be regulated to PCI. And Sumo Logic, all of it, the entire thing is a CDE or credit card data environment. And again, none of our competition has this. They can't give you an AOC if you ask for one or an attestation of compliance. SOC 2 Type 2, this is table stakes, right? This is where you start. You start with SOC 2 Type 2 and ISO 27001. What I like about SOC 2 Type 2 is that under NDA, our customers, our prospects, they can see what have we gotten better at? Where are we sort of hurting at? Just to be transparent, one of the things that I feel like we need improvement on is the way that we do offboarding. no excuses, but ever since the pandemic, that communication from managers over to HR, back into IT and security, there's just a lot of gaps there that we're working really hard to start figuring out and put a little bit more rigor around. But again, going back to SOC 2 Type 2, which by the way, all of these that you're looking at, we've been doing them for 7 years, if not more, except for FedRAMP, which I'll talk about at the end. ISO 27001. So I love this certification because you set a goal of how you're going to continually improve your processes and procedures across the organization. Year one, again, congratulations. But like I was telling a customer the other day, come back and talk to me year 2, year 3, year 4, where we're at, like year 7, because you have to do what you say you're going to do or else you lose this cert. One major nonconformity and it's over. And so you really got to work hard to improve every year. And this also comes with an internal audit that you have to do first by an independent party. And then you go out there and you get the full-blown certification after that, and then hopefully maintain it every year. So again, like if I look at this list, those are the 2 foundational type attestations and certifications that most companies should have, which is ISO 27001 multi-year, as well as SOC 2 Type 2. Now, CSA Star. This was a no-brainer for us because ISO 27001 is a prerequisite to CSA Star. And so if we were going to go after ISO 27001, why not? Why not make the leap? And by the way, I believe we were the first SaaS-based company on the planet to get CSA Star. And so we're continuing to invest in that. And then now we start getting to industry-specific certifications and attestations, but they really matter. When it comes to HIPAA, this is all around personal identifiable information out there. So it's PII, it's PHI, patient healthcare information, protected healthcare information. People say it about 5 different ways, but it's the same exact thing, all around electronic medical records, how those are handled by these organizations. And so we take a lot of pride in the fact that we go out and get attestated to that, even though we're not a healthcare company. What it means to our customers that are in the medical field is that data is being protected as part of their infrastructure because they were most likely using Sumo for logs or observability or security. And so this isn't easy, but it's something that we went out there and did for the medical industry, and then just to show that higher level of protection around data. NYDFS, so this is the New York Department of Financial Systems. Again, we're not a financial company, but we work with a lot of financial companies. We're lucky enough to have them as customers. And so we went out and got attestated towards it, meaning that our partners, Coalfire, who do most of these audits for us, they wrote a really nice white paper along with us and checked common controls across NYDFS and made sure that Sumo lived up to those. So then that way, people in the financial industry can feel comfortable sending their logs into Sumo Logic. The next one's tough, because EMEA, the EU Privacy Shield, this was a great way for us to show data sovereignty, for our customers to understand that once they have data like in Frankfurt, it stays in Frankfurt. Unfortunately, this one's going away, but until it completely goes away, we're going to continue to get this and do this for our customers. It's going to be interesting to see what emerges next. But this is an ongoing game in EMEA. First it was Safe Harbor, and then Safe Harbor was gone. Now we're looking at EU Privacy Shield. Obviously, on a privacy perspective, we have GDPR as well too. But one of the things I really loved about EU Privacy Shield was it kept us from having to do a ton of model clauses. And for those of you who are familiar with those, you're probably like rolling your eyes right now or tightening up because they're very difficult documents to read through, and it slows down business quite a bit. But we'll look and see what's next for privacy when it comes to EMEA and continue to work with our customers and prospects out there. Encryption, well, I talked about this a little bit earlier, but everything within Sumo is 256-bit AES encrypted. And then obviously TLS encryption in transit, 1.2 or higher is what we're looking at. And then our key rotation, which we should talk about as well too. One of the reasons why we were able to get PCI many years ago is because of that dual responsibility model. So each one of our customers gets 2 new keys every single day, one for raw data, one for metadata. And then those keys get rotated and they're encrypted with KEK. And then they're put in a third-party proprietary S3 bucket, which is then encrypted with KEK. And then we start the process over the next day. And that is at the core of our PCI certification is having that constant key rotation. Again, competition doesn't do this, can't do this. In fact, most of them, you have to open up a ticket and wait a couple of weeks to have that key rotation done, which would drive me absolutely nuts because that's a perfect time for a bad actor to get going. So let's talk about FedRAMP for a bit. And I don't want to dive too deep in this, but FedRAMP has been sort of my baby here at Sumo Logic for many, many years. We're super proud of this. We have 27 authorizations today if you go look at the FedRAMP marketplace. And it comes with a lot more than that. Now, I'll give you a great example. When the Okta breach, and the reason why I'm using quotes, air quotes, which I usually don't do, is because, they had 300 or so customers that were affected by a third-party contractor who wasn't even using MFA and answered one of those questions saying they were. And so that's kind of the problem I have with those questionnaires. But part of the benefit is when we started talking to Okta, because we're a customer of Okta's, the first thing that we saw was our Fed environment was not affected by any breach. And the reason why is because third-party contractors are not allowed to touch their federal environment. So think about the power of that and the amount of rigor that goes into FedRAMP. For those of you that don't care about the federal government, don't care about supporting them as far as part of your customer base or do business with them, just think about the operational rigor, though, that you're getting if you do use any software company's federal offering. It's really impactful and significant. And so we not only are federal agencies, that we're lucky enough again to serve and support, but we have a lot of customers out there on the commercial side that we serve and support because they support the federal government as well too. So we're very mature in this space. We have a public sector team that's doing a great job. And so please, you ought to talk to our sales folks about our FedRAMP offering. It's pretty cool. And then the last piece I really want to hit on before I move past this slide is we invest $2 million plus annually on these certifications, attestations, and all these distinct controls we have. Because we do this, you are now getting that for free as part of the service. And I want you to think about that. Let's say you're rolling out an on-premise solution, right? You have to have networking to support that, servers to support that, all the typical things that you have to do, load balancers on-premise. Who's in charge of making sure that environment is compliant or meeting up to your compliance standards when it comes to a logging solution? Well, the customer is. And that could be a massive expense plus FTE time and effort to do that within that infrastructure. With Sumo Logic, you get that as part of our service because we are cloud native SaaS. And so you're in the retail industry, great, there's PCI. It now comes into scope for your audit if you do send over PCI logs. Healthcare, again, PHI logs come in. Well, now we extend as part of your audit because we're doing the same exact thing and protecting that data. Same thing with federal, which I just talked about a few minutes ago. So this comes to you as part of our service that you get turnkey out of the box with Sumo Logic. All right, so this is one of my favorite things to go over with customers and prospects. I'll touch on it at a high level, but I could talk about this slide for an hour. So what you're looking at is our security supply chain, and we have the same thing for IT in case you're ever interested in seeing that as well too. So at the top are all the capabilities. So some of the things that we're working on, just like you, asset management, to insider threat, to zero trust, to SOAR, which by the way, we have a great SOAR product in DF Labs that we acquired a few years ago. And then underneath that are the folks that we choose to partner with in our supply chain. So deep partnerships that we inspect all the time to make sure that they're living up to the standards that we do. So then that way there are no weak links, or at least we know the risk of what's coming into the supply chain. This is also, if you're a Sumo customer or you're a Sumo prospect, a great way to start thinking about maybe how you're constructed. Do we look similar? Do we not? Are you using Okta for single sign-on and Duo for MFA? Are you using Jamf across your Mac endpoints? What are we doing with it internally? What kind of logs are we picking up? How are we correlating, normalizing, and parsing those logs as well too? So you can see there's a lot going on here. We also identify open source because we're an open source company. We like using open source quite a bit. Even past Log4j and things like that, we lean into open source and we like using that community, but we identify that to our customers so that way they know where we have it. And then a couple of other things I want to touch on here as well too, bug bounties. So if you look at vulnerability management, you see that we have HackerOne there. I just did a session with HackerOne earlier this week. I hope you got a chance to see it. If you didn't, please watch it. HackerOne also has a FedRAMP initiative as well. but we've been using them for bug bounties for many, many years. We used BugCrowd as well too a while back, but we've always kind of settled in on HackerOne. And this is just another great way to show how we're building trust within the community, because we're paying ethical hackers to hack our platform and break shit. So it's going to continue to be a long-term relationship, and we're going to continue to do that through our platform moving forward. So hopefully a lot of this looks familiar to you. SOAR is important to us as well within our Global Operations Center, which, by the way, is a combination of a NOC and a SOC. We put those two together once we became one team. But the way that I like to look at SOAR is this. If I go to the doctor and I have a heart condition, I want that doctor to say, George, you have a heart condition. But if he walks away without prescribing anything, what good does that do me? So look at SOAR as kind of the prescription that a doctor is going to give you to fix that heart condition. And so we've invested a lot in our SOAR platform, and then our team obviously drinks our own champagne and uses it quite a bit. On the right, you see all the different, again, certifications, attestations that we're under, and then some roadmap type stuff there as well too. And then the independent auditors that we use. So we use Coalfire for just about everything except for FedRAMP. When it comes to FedRAMP, we use Kratos, who focuses specifically on the federal market. They do a great job. And then we use Deloitte to come in and do our pre-SOX checks. So that's our partner there. And then to finalize SOX, we use PwC, which many of you as being public-facing companies, I'm sure do the same exact thing. So now that we've looked at like our SOC, our NOC combined Global Operations Center, let's take it a step further as to what is it that we're actually bringing in. So when you look at the different use cases across the top, from APT going all the way to risk and vulnerability management, think of the left-hand column as the logs that you need to be able to meet these specific use cases. So everything from firewall router all the way down to cloud infrastructure audit. And then inside of the white boxes, why we need them. So, what is this really going to do for us? So let's take a look at, for example, identity and authentication, because this is one of the areas I love. So monitoring for brute force attacks, lateral movement, so being east-west movement across the organization, and suspicious logins. And so the logs I need for that, well, you saw the chart before. That's going to be our Okta logs, as well as our Duo logs as well too for MFA. And then we want to look for things like, is there a VPN sitting in between? Where's the MFA push happening? Are two people logging in from two different geolocations? So this is a really good example across these different use cases of what kinds of logs you need and then why you need them. And so if you ever have any interest, just reach out to me, reach out to your sales team, and we can get way deep into this. And we can also talk about tiering models as well too, when you start looking at the different types of logs that we actually ingest, because that's a very important point. I don't think a lot of our customers realize we have to pay for logs too, right? Who do we pay? Well, we pay AWS because that's where we write on. So we have to be very careful about what logs we bring in, and then our tiering really helps. So for example, a lot of our compliance logs, we put in an infrequent model because we're not running constant searches against them. And so being able to tier out what kind of logs you use, I think is a major competitive advantage for us, because it helps bring or manage the costs to a level that's acceptable while not sacrificing security. Because unfortunately, I know a lot of you out there are like, oh, I just can't bring in those logs because it costs too much. Next thing you know, there's an event, there's a breach, there's an incident, and you didn't have logs. Why? Because of cost. And so our tiering model does a really good service for our customers out there. But anywho, we can talk about this slide in a lot of depth. Just reach out to your sales team and get in contact with me, and then we'll get you on with the appropriate folks. So just to wrap up, there's a couple of things that I just wanted to make sure we talked about forward thinking. There's three major regulations that are changing and coming down the pike. The first one is the new SEC guidelines around cybersecurity. This is going to force public-facing companies to report material incidents within 4 days. And there's a lot of ambiguity around it. And so between that and supply chain and some of the ESG changes taking place, which we care about tremendously, keep an eye out for that. We're doing a lot of thought leadership stuff around it, but we're also going to incorporate that into our platform and the way we operate from a board level down. The second one is PCI moving from 3.2 to 4.0. So more cloud, more privacy. Same thing with the SEC, like privacy is really starting to come full force now. We saw it a little bit before the pandemic with like the California Consumer Privacy Act. Obviously, GDPR was there, but now it just looks like it's starting to really tick up. And so a lot of these regulations are now putting more privacy measures in place. And with PCI, it's no different, becoming more cloud centric, moving to 4.0. So we have to look at what the impact is going to be of that to our controls. But I guarantee you Sumo is going to be up to par and audit against 4.0 as soon as we're allowed to do that. The last one is, again, FedRAMP. So FedRAMP is moving from NIST 800-53 Rev 4 to Rev 5. And it's got material changes in it, significant control changes, and then a big bucket around privacy. So we've already done a whole bunch of analysis and looked at what that uptake is going to take for us to continue to meet that certification and regulation for our customers. So again, if you want to collaborate, you want to talk about those things, we're always here. We love partnering with our customers. It's really cool to see how we drink our own champagne. And again, one thing I want to make sure that everyone walks away with, if you are a prospect, that fabric I showed earlier in that slide, that's just what we use internally. We collect from data sources on-premise, multiple cloud providers. That's just who we use. But again, more than happy to chat, talk about it. But this is also my last session that I'm doing at Illuminate this year. So I wanted to thank you all so much. There's so much you could be doing with your time, but you chose it to spend it with Sumo Logic and with me. So I'm forever grateful about that. And do not hesitate to reach out. Again, thank you so much. Appreciate your time and have a great conference.